Now, tonight's show has been declared a COVID-free zone. You'll be delighted with that because, well, I am at least, the truth has been lost in a maze of obfuscation and political spin. It makes me angry to see what they're doing to our country, and I'm not going to start my weekend or your weekend with anger. So, rather than look at the shiny object our politicians want us to focus on, I'd rather examine the stuff that they don't want us to see. See, our politicians know that the policy agenda they've rolled out over successive decades has actually made common sense far less common. Thanks to addictive technology, the attention span of the average person is actually getting less and less as well. Remember the political 7-second soundbite? Well, it's now a 3-second snack, mostly because they know that's how long the focus is before people move on to other media morsels. Our viewers, though, are different, because you actually care what's going on in society. You can see the results of this grand social experiment, and let's be frank, there isn't much to like. Consider for a moment our children. Now, let me assure you, they are not born dumber than previous generations, and yet the normal standards of educational measurement show that their numeracy and literacy skills are actually declining. And almost any employer will tell you, if you ask them about a school graduate to, say, compose a simple letter or handwrite anything, the spelling, the grammar and the prose is almost indecipherable. Now, it's the same with basic mathematics, of course. Back when I had a pub, I remember asking a Year 12 student how much change there was from I think it was a $2.80 coffee from a $5 note. I remember they couldn't tell me. Now, I know some of you might be saying, but we've got so many geniuses, they're inventing great things, they must be really, really smart. Well, you're right, geniuses are really, really smart, but they're the exception, they're not the norm. And as a rule, our education system has been focused for too long on social experiments, on rewriting history, rather than the building blocks that fuel progress in higher learning. One university professor told me years ago that today's university entrants have the literacy skills of a Year 9 student of years past. Now, those low standards enable the effective brainwashing of the next generation of adults. Because if you can't effectively critique and question what you're told, then you grow to simply accept it. And that's what's going on in our schools today. Right around the Western world, we have people like this instructing our children.
This has been my first year in preschool with a class of my own, teaching alongside another queer neurodivergent educator, and we have been rocking our twos class. We've been talking about gender and skin color and consent and empathy and our bodies.
If somebody comes and tells you that male is this and female is this, X, 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 Y, where males have a penis and females have a vagina, and that's the end of the story. You told me they could have both. They're about 5th grade biology level.
Put them hands down. Put them hands. Your teacher just left out of here. You ain't had no questions for her. You ain't got nothing for me. I don't know nothing. Okay? I'm in here for a good time, not a long time. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me.
Now, these are overseas examples, but I can assure you things are not much better over here. And the current failures can be traced back to the 1960s and 70s, when the education revolution first took hold. That was when the more formal approach to learning, those pesky things like grammar, syntax, writing, critical thinking, and maybe even times tables, well, they went the way of the dodo. The personal growth model was introduced. It replaced basic skills. And teachers were told that correcting faulty spelling and punctuation, well, that stifled creativity and imagination. You might have hurt a few people's feelings too. Well, few imagined what a disaster this would become. And in today's uninformed world, correcting schoolwork is somehow racist or sexist, it's oppressive, or whatever new catch-all words the left are currently pushing. Let's remember that Dr. Seuss is now banned, while the gender fairy is apparently entirely normal for preschoolers. And like a lot of the garbage we see today, the education system's failings, it's got its roots in Marxism. Antonio Gramsci, he was effectively patient zero of the current Marxist push, knew that the education system was key to undermining capitalism and the West. It spawned what academic Kevin Donnelly describes as a rainbow alliance of cultural left theories, including deconstructionism, postmodernism, and radical feminist, gender, queer, and post-colonial theories. Donnelly wrote in The Australian recently, "The formal rules of language use are condemned as instruments employed by the capitalist class to enforce cultural hegemony. Radical feminists argue standard English and the rules of grammar are products of the patriarchy and are binary and oppressive. Now, we've even been told in recent times that 2 + 2 = 4 is actually racist. According to one college professor, it, and I quote, reeks of white supremacist patriarchy. Now, this maths teacher said she'd rather protect the planet. Well, perhaps the best way she could do that would be to save future generations from her crackpot ideas. But so we've learned that maths and English language are actually the tools of oppression. Somehow we must let the Taliban know that so they don't allow them to oppress the Afghani people, that they've clearly enslaved our own children. So let me tell you what's oppressive. Having generations of Australians unable to do basic mathematics or write a coherent letter. Oppressive is teaching our kids to hate their heritage, their gender, or their skin colour. Oppressive is enlisting children in the culture wars and indoctrinating them with the radical poison known as identity politics. And you want to know how it turns out? Well, the results are there for all to see. We have raised successive generations of men and women who don't know right from wrong, but are all schooled up on whining about everything that has provided them with their opportunities in the first place. They are skilled complainers, A-grade complainers, and entitled attention seekers who think it's a burden to be untethered from their phone for more than 15 minutes. We have schools that are filled with teachers who refuse to accept responsibility, claiming instead they need to be paid more or more cash needs to be pumped into the education system. I say it's baloney on both counts. There are great teachers and they deserve more, but we pump billions more into the education system than ever before, and our results continue to get worse. The requirements to enter a teaching degree are among the lowest of all tertiary education. The problem is the curriculum and the politicising of our education system. But finally, there's some good news, some hope on the horizon. Our Education Minister, Alan Tudge, has seen the light, and he has insisted the draft national curriculum must be rewritten and that the warped lessons have to go. Warning that it supports, and I quote, ideology over evidence, the minister wrote in a letter, some of these groups, such as Australia's Peak Mathematics Association, believe the current draft will take Australian kids backwards. If the current draft is simply tweaked, it will not be supported. It needs fundamental changes. But it's not just maths and English that has the minister, and may I say many of us, concerned. He told the board, and I quote again, your draft diminishes Australia's Western liberal and democratic values. The overarching impression from the curriculum is that the main feature of Western civilization is slavery, imperialism, and colonisation. Important historical events are removed or reframed, such as the emphasis on invasion theory over Australia Day. Even Anzac Day is presented as a contested idea rather than the most sacred day of all, where we honour the millions of men and women who have served in war and the 100,000 who gave their lives for our freedom. Tudge summed it up well when he said, I believe the best way to serve the interests of our young people now is to seize every opportunity to lift educational standards. They're welcome words, and from my perspective, I say, thank God we now have a minister brave enough to say them.